And then finally there's this one moment where it's like you hit that hush point, and it could be it could be anything, as some it could be the simple thing as saying, hey, that's it for tonight, we're done. And as soon as you say that, it's like boom, the switch clicks in, and all of a sudden someone says, wait a minute, what's that on that mountain over there, so, and then the one of the craft that's kind of like had been standing by all of a sudden flares up. So as I've mentioned in other places, Japan has a very high activity of ground lights, they call them, and that's strange lights on the ground level or very close to the ground.
What is there to learn from someone who has run dozens and dozens of CE5 group training expeditions? We'll find out in this episode featuring Greg Sullivan, a man who's been doing just that in the country of Japan for over 10 years. CE5 stands for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which means human-initiated contact with extraterrestrial beings through some simple protocols that anyone can do. Greg is one of the CE5 ambassadors who was in the recent film called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Our conversation gets very wide-ranging, but we started things off discussing Greg's early experiences in organizing CE5 group events in Japan.
Yeah, could you go into some of the early experiences that you had and the synchronicities and just some of the contact experiences that you had with your first groups that you've organized?
Well, sure. Yeah. So the very first CE5 in Japan was my birthday, end of July of 2010. And so at the time, it was just friends and a couple, a newlywed couple, a friend of mine, and we were out all night. And just really from the whole get-go, my personal life and the CE5 Japan project were one and the same. So I was being guided to the right place to do it, the right time to do it. And we were having amazing results where one confirmation after another, and continuing contact where other people, I think that was a recent episode of your podcast, Andre, was that the contagious factor. So we actually had, in the early days, one of our first events with several people there, that area experienced sightings continuing on for the next few weeks. And so one person was at a stoplight on his way home from work at 10 or 11 p.m. and saw something very large in the sky. And so this kind of whole excitement factor and that whole resonance effect was touched a lot of people around me, right in the beginning. Other things were, of course, the kind of photo evidence we were getting in the field site in the beginning years, and then, of course, the fact that just a little effort was producing a major, connected to some pretty major sightings. So that was it was an anchoring process. It gave me more and more confidence to continue with what I was doing, and it also showed people how the world of the new age and sort of spiritual until then had a lot more growth that could potentially occur with this whole ET element. So we were bridging two worlds in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So the first event we ever did in the outside of my home area involved a lot of kind of like more well-known eventers that were they had quite a reputation, and there was a lot of like healers and people who were way more experienced than I was in the spiritual field there. And so we went through a process of having some major sightings. It was I think it was on a autumn equinox in the end of September. So we had a very powerful event, and I think there was like 40 people there. So I was just overwhelmed with the having to do the lecture in Japanese, and my skills are pretty up to snuff, but I was still working out my whole process. So we were at a hotel that had a proper lecture room and everything. And one of the co-organizers actually passed last year in a house fire, but he was he was a researcher of the kind of ancient hidden alphabet. There's virtually no information in English about it. It's called katakana, and it's a lost ancient alphabet or hieroglyphic system from ancient Japan. So he was studying that. So the funny thing was that as the night went on and got colder and colder, I had gotten the direction. I think it was east, let's say. So we were on the water and we were facing what looked to have been where the sky was, the most open and clear, looking out at the Kobe area, a lot of light pollution. And so finally, as people were getting colder and going back into the hotel, and we lost, over half the group as time went on, with nothing happening after those initial sightings. This was at our second location. And so I finally decided, oh, look, well, let's change. Let me follow that direction of what I got from inspiration and go look at, we'll change to face our direction to what's looking at the forest, but it is in the east, it is looking east. So at that point, we only had about 5 people left. It was, I think, after 1 a.m. And that's when the real amazing magic started, where we had a super close ground light appearance right behind the hotel on this like rock mound that had forest, a thin forest cover, and the people there could not believe their eyes. It was like it looked like someone was doing donuts on a motorcycle in the woods there, but there was no road there. It's just kind of it kind of stumps you. And they love to ride the line. I see the ETs love to ride this line of, they blur your perception as to, at 1 second you're saying, oh my god, that's a ship that's only a couple hundred meters away, like right in front of us. And then you start to doubt yourself, saying, wait a minute, who is that? Someone flashing a light? Like, are they dancing in the woods over there, or is that a motorcycle doing, there's no noise, but it just, so that it kind of like, they love to blur that perceptual um you know uh gray zone, you might call it. And then finally, the interesting thing was that that was a rare experience where normally you hear about the site being warmed up, when it's like getting cold out like that. A lot of people experience a temperature inversion. And this time they made me feel really cold. So they actually did this thing where these sort of like community leaders and elders in the Kansai area there, they needed to experience this on their own. So actually the guides got me out of the way, and I was like, I kind of had to give up. I was so cold. I was like, guys, I'm going into bed. and then they let it continued on for another half hour, apparently, they said. So the people who had, they really needed to have the experience, but they kind of didn't need me as the filter. So that was sort of a interesting occurrence that happened there.
Mm.
That was within the first year of J City.
Yeah, I remember reading about that in the book Paths to Contact. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
How was it, I guess the translation process and the cultural kind of thing that you went through in bringing this kind of disclosure information and information about Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind to a Japanese audience? I'm curious how your experience might be useful for other people who are in non-English speaking countries. And
so basically, yeah, the just kind of paring down, and the Contact trilogy is quite simple in its own right. But I think a lot of us find that not only are we trying to appease like the doubters, but we also, on the positive side, it's so exciting how there's a new kind of science that attaches to this contact, or Dr. Greer's cosmology is really quite fleshed out. That's never really been that clear before. So just helping to share that is really inspirational. So I found that finding the balance, I kind of just had to read the air, and sometimes time speeds up. So you'll be planning to do this amount of lecture, and then like you look at your watch, and like an hour and a half's gone by, and it's like, oh man, we got to get out in the field. It's like, so it is like jazz. It is an improvisation the whole time. In Dr. Greer's meditation, there is a Zen element in the fact that what is watching the mind. So that is in Dr. Greer's element, Dr. Greer's CTS and all that. A lot of the meditation is based on Maharishi, and that kind of Sanskrit, and of course the puja and everything, and a Hindu based cosmology. But the one element, he starts off a lot of the meditations with the who is watching the mind, what is watching the mind's awareness, is that's a Zen based thing, based approach.
Right. Yeah. And well, one thing I think with this work is that there's a lot of overlap and a lot of, what CE5, it's basically in line with a lot of spirituality and religious teachings as well, that like in terms of how you get to these certain levels of consciousness and what's possible when you reach those states. And so that's something I think it's nice that it's really accessible, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter what your cultural background is. there's ties to, it's because we're all human and we all have this certain experience, and it's a universal thing, like
Yes,
yeah.
he's done a great job at not kind of biasing any kind of particular school, or keeping, leaving a lot of entry points. Yeah, as you say, exactly.
Hmm. Can you share like maybe one or two really impactful experiences of contact that you've had, maybe in yeah, just in the last few years?
Well, yeah, yeah, of course, some of the just the building the momentum of the project, of course, was having the ability to have been published like that, and like I said, so we had connecting with a lot of Soul family over the years, in the first uh our first our early supporters um in their area are, we're still obviously connected and doing the CE5 every year there. So establishing this sort of local network in Japan was such an amazing process of discovery and collaboration and amazement. So there's so many episodes of contact, and all the different types and of experience we've had. And um I think the big thing is the of course, when you thought it was like, some nights, there some nights the activity is a lot hotter than others. So what stands out in my mind is the times when you might have just been about to give up and say, oh well, yeah, oh, it's like, again, this kind of logical mind, well, today is that's all we're gonna get, or it's sort of like this they keep you doubting, and they kind of draw you along. And it's like, and then when finally everyone is on the same page energetically, you kind of finally get there. Sometimes it takes a while. You could do a 2-hour lecture. You can show them the process. You can guide 3 or 4 meditations, have a lot of downtime, have a few breaks, all within a 3 or 4 hour night, and then still not have any response. So that can be really discouraging. And so you're trying to build this resident thing, and then finally there's this one moment where it's like you hit that hush point, and it could be anything. It could be the simple thing as saying, hey, that's it for tonight, we're done. And as soon as you say that, it's like boom, the switch clicks in, and all of a sudden someone says, wait a minute, what's that on that mountain over there? So, and then the one of the craft that's kind of like had been standing by all of a sudden flares up. So as I've mentioned in other places, Japan has a very high activity of ground lights, they call them, and that's strange lights on the ground level or very close to the ground.
Hmm.
So the peak of that was really in the islands of Okinawa, where we had just incredible, like just jaw-dropping ground light activity on top of the water on the ocean. And so having that become like a standard, where like these very first times participants got to see this level that was like unheard of, like unthinkable contact, and that was like became their everyday standard. And so there was like this kind of like an ascension project happening there in that area for a few years, where even when there was no event, it also the supporters were we all got on the same page, so they were able to go back and experience this repeatedly, even without protocols. So
Hmm.
we had like multiple witness confirmation. And the big thing about it is that this was area, the ships were appearing just like 800 meters, less than a kilometer away, right across from us, with it in the right across this cove. So I got a ton of footage of that.
Hmm.
And it's an ongoing process. So then you realize, then like when that sighting and our events, kind of, we were having 2 and 3 events there in that site every year. And then finally, when it faded out and kind of cooled down, we ended up realizing that the place the ships kept appearing in was the grave site, or a sort of a sacred site of one of the historical figures of the island. And so that opened up this whole other thing. And then yeah, so that way it really connects into the Shinto philosophy, and the ships really respect that, and they kind of like, at times they will connect to that network as well, energetically.
Hmm.
So yeah, just, and then of course having kids in the site there. So we had, in those early events, there was the first one in that island was the day before the new school year started, and for some reason there was a lot of families there too. So we had, young couples with very small children, and just kind of everyone. It just showed with an unfettered CE5 what the real possibility of the community aspect of it could be, and we were able to manifest that amazingly in Okinawa.
Yeah, and it's something that it's amazing, isn't it, that the group energy, like when you're with a group like that, from people from all different backgrounds and ages and stuff, like the excitement. Can you describe the excitement of like where everybody's witnessing the same thing happening?
Yeah, I just, I mean, by the way, I mean, so yeah, just to describe the sighting is like we're talking about a ground light that's active and on, like visible for over an hour in the same spot, and then like having things shoot off of it, and just the type of thing you might see in a crazy YouTube video for like 20 seconds going on for an hour and a half to 2 hours kind of thing, and then it's just like blows your entire it just blows your entire it sort of resets all your gauges. So the excitement, it's just like, yeah, and then when the lights really flare up and they get large, like you just feel this, you really feel the distance disappear, and so the whole group is lifted up on this kind of energetic carpet, magic carpet, and so yeah, just it's just like a party, you'll eventually, when I start to release those videos, you'll hear like just people screaming. It's definitely not the calm.
Mhm.
I'm going crazy too. It's yeah, it's a party, totally a party. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've been there. Like, that's why when you were telling the story, I was like, oh, they must have been screaming and been like, oh wow, how cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, and then of course the amazing thing is like when you have a child, like you have the laser. We use the lasers at times in the field, and to hold the child's hand and have them signal, and like they're getting this back and forth with a crowd. It's like their life is being changed right there and there. This
Mhm.
elementary school child. That's an unforgettable experience. Yeah.
Mm. So I'm
So
ready
we
to shift
watched
gears,
those.
unless you want
Yeah, go ahead.
to
Yeah.
continue a little bit. Um, about basically right now, there's also, in addition to a lot of the truth that's coming out, there's a lot of other stuff kind of that can bog um, what's happening in this movement down. Like, so could you talk about, I guess, just get into the modern conspiracy phenomenon and like what's going on with all of the stuff that's happening, like all of the I don't know, fake news or other stuff, other conspiracies that are kind of that go alongside this movement.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I think the whole topic of earlier about the whole programming being, and kind of having to undo the essence of ET contact is sort of, we've called it like fifth dimensional spirituality. It's something beyond the new age and spiritual world up until now. And so and obviously um, there's a lot of the UFO community has experienced a lot of COINTELPRO type of interference and tons of disinformation over the years. So the amazing thing about CE5 is that you have your own experience, which is the ultimate, kind of leveler, where you're not, you can't. The only thing we have is our own experience in a way. So when you're giving your power away to things that can't be proven, and just all sorts of testimony that's full of questions and full of holes, it presents this whole other parallel reality, parallel problem. So I think the whole consciousness shift happening with the quote unquote ascension is you have to be on riding the ship, you have to be on board yourself, so people have been encouraged and kind of misguided to outsource that process, the spiritual growth, so giving their power away, and the disinformation is full of hooks, and it's a consciousness trap that sort of enmeshes people as they're awakening and kind of pulls them off their course. So it's all about frequency, and they've done a great job in kind of cloning a lot of this, the disclosure information over the years, and of course the QAnon phenomena was really big in Japan. So I've noticed that, this whole last year especially, there was a lot of people waking up last year, just like So the time involved with their awakening process has gotten a lot shorter, and we have a lot of amazing resources at our disposal. But at the same time, these people are kind of targeted and are vulnerable to having the lack of experience and personal interaction with these phenomenon leaves you vulnerable to becoming misled and kind of disinformation. There's certain core elements that are always the same. So the QAnon phenomena was pretty big here. So I've kind of I wasn't openly supportive or um, detractive of it, but I have seen the one thing I've been kind of making videos on YouTube about lately is that we're no longer if you go up to the ET level of the issues, then you kind of get beyond the political. If you stay in the political level, it's an endless struggle of duality. So trying to raise the, and then at least we're trying to get the people who awaken via QAnon and that sort of thing up into a disclosure mindset, because in that material you've got like the cabal. You're like one step away from where you could be, but there's no mention of youth apps. There's no mention of ARVs. There's no mention of this, the really, really
new energy
free energy
technologies.
yeah, where is all that? So
Mm,
it's like it's a what you might call a consciousness trap, a web, so I think that process of initiation, we need to bridge those. There's gaps in between each of these tectonic plates.
mm,
So yeah, I've been trying to make content that fills that gap. And also, I think the big blowback issue here too is when you get involved as a content creator and a lecturer and stuff, is what they've tried to do is that when these movements then collapse, is that it makes you especially, I was home in the US last year, so everyone now who talks about any of this stuff is automatically a Trump supporter.
mm,
No, and that's not the case at all, right? So it's like, no, anyone who talks about anything, it's become so polarized that
mm,
they've hijacked all the dialogue. And so we're going to need a lot of new keywords. I think the NLP aspect that's part
mm,
of the disinformation war, is all about NLP and
mm.
programming.
Neurolinguistic programming.
We
Yeah.
need, yes, linguistic programming. We need new buzzwords, strong branding, to kind of capture people's attention, to at least get them back to point, square one. And then the whole blowback thing is that, once these movements collapse and then evaporate, you kind of they're trying to roll us up into that too. So at a certain point, I've had to say I do not support this. Just say no. You have to. It's not being aggressive, and it's not being detractive, but it is setting up a boundary to say, because it's sort of like I found with
Yeah.
these
Distinction.
programs is
Mm,
distinction. And if you don't say no at a certain point, no, not saying no equals yes in
mhm,
this world. So it's about consent, the energetics of consent as well come into this.
mhm,
Yeah, so I find that there's a major, the tug of war going on is getting really aggressive, and even if you didn't want to get involved, you sort of guilty by association when you
mhm.
do this stuff as well.
Yeah.
So I think being clear, communicating clearly, covering a lot of those gaps, and those are all challenges and issues we'll have to deal with in the future as well. And yeah, I find that, so when people, and then like in my perspective, people come to the events with these sort of preconceived notions. So
Mm,
the problem is that the ETs, and how this relates to CE5, is that the guides will not break those walls down for us. It has to be, we're giving them permission to contact us by being vocal and present. And that also goes down to our worldview and cosmology. That all connects to contact. So if you want to be successful with your CE5 work, then I find that it's a process of getting on the same page as this sort of ultimate objective truth. So keeping that channel clear of programming, bias, distortion, and disinformation is really, really essential. So group leaders and people kind of going to carry the torch in the years to come on this need to be aware of that distinction, and that people coming in with this preconceived programming. You have to kind of deprogram that in a way, because the ETs aren't going to do it. So that's a whole ripe you know, a topic that needs to be dissected in the years to come, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's a full-on psychological warfare we're talking about. They've you know, they know all that they've gotten. They know these people. They know the human psychology inside and out, and it's
Mm-hmm.
you know, so we have to set up a sort of perimeter or like a safeguards
Mm-hmm.
for you know, because that's going to block the results of contact. You know, you could go to a grand slam, a 10 in a C5 event, but if you've got half the group that's programmed, whether that's fear programming or anger related political stuff or these kind of like slight internal distortions, then you're only going to maybe get to a level 5, you know, and then there's no scale. But I'm saying like in and what's actually possible, you know, so
Mm-hmm.
that's it ties into coherence, you know, the group coherence is what we're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And that has
mhm.
changed. That climate has changed big time, and especially last year. So the people that were coming to our events, our YouTube channel really took off last year. So every single event, we had an enormous flood of new. I think all the groups, all the organizers across the world did last year. A lot of new faces, which is amazing. So um, that can be most people are totally open and it's just amazing, but at the same time there are these topics and people want to hear our opinion too, so I don't want to have to default, and so we've been pushed to be real clear about all that, you know, so that's all a part of the lecture I do
Mm-hmm.
when before we got into the field as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have any kind of last pieces of advice that you could give for anybody who's interested in CE5?
Definitely, yeah. I find that definitely, you know, first I'll get outside. You know, a lot of people try the you know, the practicing the meditation is great. I think everyone has one hang up or another that blocks them from going to where they could go, but um I also suggest to definitely make an outing of it. You know, I find that if you kind of like make a trip of it or a small journey, you know, um go ahead and, you know, challenge yourself to get out to the next state, next province, next prefecture, whatever, you know, make a trip of it. If you commit a little more effort and time, that really translates to major results. So
Mm.
um and also, you know, I think the distance between us and the ETs is getting a lot smaller. So expect a lot more direct contact, and you know, the beings will come, the ET guides will come right into your room. So
Mhm.
if you want to try and welcome them close in, you know, they'll it's up to you. If you're okay with it, they're there, you know, they're ready, they're just standing by.
Mhm.
So I think people like they see a lot of the tools and stuff. The tools and can be helpful, and the equipment and the tech can be helpful. But all you really need is that pure intention and you know, a little bit of time on your hands to try and get out there and just take it to the next step. So trust in the process. You may not have results right away, but you need to we also have to open up our strike zone, and that you must realize that uh, the even the smallest changes of your environment, we're trying to pick up those subtle aspects and subtle communications as well. So in my opinion, you know, see, my experience to CE5 is also, it's not only just those amazing sightings and interactions with the ships, it's also the telepathic element, the synchronicities, you know, the that subtle communication element, interdimensional communication is really developing the skill to catch that is really key as well. The hypersensitivity or whatever you might call it, you know.
Thanks for being here. I'm Andre Cardoso, the host of the show, and I've had these most recent episodes in waiting for some time now, so I'm so happy to finally get them out to you. I wanted to remind you that in June 2023, you should check out Dr. Stephen Greer's Historic Disclosure Conference and new National Press Club event happening in Washington, D.C. and streaming online. That weekend will include the premiere of the new documentary film, The Lost Century, all about breakthrough zero-point energy technologies, their suppression, and their potential. That's happening from the 10th through the 12th of June, and more information is available at the links in the show notes. And for even more episodes and resources to help you along your own CE5 journey, check out those links in the show notes and head to ce5podcast.com. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace and love.